So what I'm going to talk about today is just do a little intro to HTML, CSS, and then incorporating some JavaScript in there. So can everyone see my screen? Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So up until this point, you've been working on challenges in the Bootcamp Prep curriculum or classroom, like right here. But if you go back to what's great about REPL is that you don't have to download like VS Code or Sublime or anything to actually write your code in and execute it. It's all done within the web browser, which is nice because you don't have to install anything. You don't have to worry about versions and things conflicting with one another. And you can actually just select the language you want to write in. So before we've been using Node or also JavaScript to write our code in. But if you want to have write code in Python, you can click Python, or you can go up here into this little blue plus sign. You can click that, and you can pick the language that you want to write code in. So there's Python, Node. But today or tonight, I just want to do an introduction of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what's great about REPL is that they have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all right here. So it already creates the kind of the architecture of a vanilla CSS, JavaScript, and HTML file structure to enables you to actually go ahead and start writing code really quickly. So if I click that, so this is what I'm going to be writing in, and I can just say like intro to vanilla front end, and I can create a REPL. And REPL, it was kind of being a little sketchy earlier, so hopefully it works. So over here, so we have HTML or an index.html on our left-hand side. We see all our files within this file structure. So we have an index.html. So HTML files are a word followed by .html. Let me zoom in a little bit. So as you can see there, it already has some predefined. I'm going to just delete that for right now, just to see. And I'm going to delete that right away. But it already gave us like a good starting point of where to start actually developing. Then we also have a script.javascript file, so .js. That means it's a JavaScript file right here. And then a CSS file. We'll get into what these are. It's style. It could be any word followed by a .css. So HTML is essentially everything you see on the screen inside of a web browser. All here, this is all HTML. What you're seeing up here, this run, it's a button, it's all HTML. And what we can do is change or write our own HTML in this index.html file, click run, and it should show up right here, which acts as like a small web browser. And then down here, we have the console, which you should be familiar with when you're executing JavaScript code and clicking run. Your JavaScript code would be run right here. So with that, what is HTML? HTML is literally just a markup language for web pages. It lets you know specifically where certain elements on the web page should be displayed, like this little avatar here. This is like an image of some sort. And the markup language, HTML, hypertext markup language, that's what HTML stands for. It just determines what shows up on the page and where it shows up. Does anybody have any questions about HTML? And we'll get into kind of what the architecture looks like. And then there's JavaScript. A JavaScript file, you should be very familiar with that. If I just do like console.log, hello everyone, and run that, it should show, oh yeah, I guess it's not going to show down there yet. But when I run this, we're going to see it show up down here when we're writing HTML. And then CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It just essentially makes your web page and makes it look pretty. You apply styling to it. So I can make this button green or blue. I can make this background black, etc. It just kind of styles, makes your web page kind of look sexy. So does anybody have any questions about the three? And then the JavaScript file, we can interact with certain elements within the web page. So like when I click this button edit, it does something. JavaScript changes something on the screen, tells it to open this box, and now this box opens and I can change some stuff on here. So if I do edited, if I click enter, some JavaScript is executed and it resaves this as something, as a different name. So that's what JavaScript allows us to interact with the web page. So let's just talk about HTML real quick. So if I just do, HTML isn't really a actually programming language. It's a hypertext. It's a markup language that doesn't have a whole lot. It doesn't have any logic to it. So like for loops, if statement, conditions. It doesn't really have anything like that. But someone. Thank you. But I'm able to create what are known as tags, and those tags, whatever I put in between the tags, is what's going to show up on the screen. So I'm going to do H1, which is a header 1 tag, and do like hello everyone, and then see if this works, and then do a closing H1 tag. So you need to surround whatever text you want on the screen. Surrounded by the H1 tag. So H1 tag has open bracket, closing bracket right here. And then to close it out, you do a / H1 tag, open bracket, closing bracket, like that. And if I run that, I see hello everyone on the web page. Does anybody have any questions about kind of what I just did to get that to show up? That is, again, written in the index.html file. Likewise, there's all these other different, so if I just type that open bracket, this file already knows this kind of shows up, and I'm able to see all these other different types of tags. If I wanted to do a paragraph tag, which is P, this is a paragraph tag. I can do P, and if I run that, it's going to say, hey, this is a paragraph tag on the web page right here. But before, when I first opened this, there's a bunch of other text on here before I actually deleted it all. And that is required if you want to import our style sheets and our JavaScript into the HTML file, and that enables us to utilize styling and JavaScript in this file. So I'm going to just revert back to, let's see. Oh. 5. So a standard HTML file has an architecture that looks like this. And I'm going to move that. Whoop. So it has this doc type HTML. It's always at the very top. It just signals or tells the web browser, hey, like this is in fact an HTML file. Then we have an HTML tag right here and a closing HTML tag at the very bottom. So everything needs to be within this HTML tag. And then just like a person, it has a head and a body right here. So anything within the head, this is where any metadata goes. You really don't need to worry about this right now. It goes where the title is, and this whatever in this title tag shows up here in the web browser, but currently it doesn't just because this is a replit. But this is also where I want to import our style sheets in our web page. So, so in order to add my style sheets file into this HTML file, I need to link it by doing a link tag, and then say what kind of rel property, and then it's a style sheet, and then type. This is all, I'm just gonna grab this, kind of show you right here. And then this href is where the name of the actual file of your style sheet. So we're not actually doing any styling quite yet, but if I wanted to, I'll show you in a second. So when I run that, nothing actually shows up anymore, because anything that you want to show up on the screen has to be inside of this body tag. So if I do h1 and I do hello everyone again and run that, I get hello everyone. So anything that I want to show up on the screen has to be inside of this body tag. Now, if I wanted to, let's actually open up that. I wish I could split this. So now I'm inside my style sheet, my CSS file, and I've linked it to my HTML file by doing with this link tag. And you can literally Google like how to use CSS and HTML, see what shows up. So right here in W3 Schools, kind of tells you, let's look at it. Like right here is kind of how you link it inside of an HTML tag or HTML file. So inside the head, we have our link, href, inside the head. So style sheets, it's not a coding language. It's just a way to access different tags, different IDs, and different classes in our HTML file and manipulate it. So if I wanted to manipulate this hello everyone and say like make the color red, I can grab the selector. So I can say like, hey, grab the H1 tag and then open parentheses and closing parentheses. And then I can say, hey, what do I want to change on in the H1 tag? I can say like, I want to change the color. So the color is a attribute or a key, and I want to change it to red. And if I run that, it changes the text to red.
Quick question.
Yep.
So when you do that, would it do it to all H1 tags, or is there a way to say, like if for whatever reason you had two, right, sequentially, is there a way to say turn the first one red and turn maybe the second one blue?
Yes, there is actually. So this will take this, I'm grabbing the tag H1, and if there's other H1 tags in my application or in this web page, it would change all of them red. But say I wanted to have H1, Goodbye. So if I run that, both of them are red. And there's a way to grab the very first, H1 tag. So it could only change that one, but that's kind of advanced. So like how to select first tag in Html Css. So let's just Google that. So I think it's called first type of. Let's check that out. Or maybe it's not first child. I think it's first type of. So like here's an example. I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna copy this. Come over here, H1 colon first type of, and run that. And there you go. I just grabbed the first type of the H1 tag and made it red. And the second one is just normal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There's also another way. So let's say in my H1, I'm going to say paragraph, item 1. So I'm creating a paragraph tag, item 2, and run that. If I wanted to change just an item 1 to something else, I can give it an ID, so which is a unique identifier. No other tag can have this ID. And say like first paragraph, or just like what should I say? Not container, title, or something like that.
Item 1 or something. Yeah.
Yep. So I can go back to my CSS, and instead of doing like paragraph and saying like background color is blue and running it, both of the background colors are blue. If I just want to access the ID, I can do hashtag and the name of the ID. And if I run that, now the first one is only blue. And you can add multiple attributes to it. So if I want the background color to be blue, I can do a semicolon, enter, and I want the actual color, what's going on? Color to be white. If I run that, now I have the front color to be white, the actual text color to be white.
Cool. Thank you.
And there's another, if you wanted, so there's also classes, which are similar to H1s, or not similar, but if you wanted a group, if I had like a group of elements, so like paragraph, name, I don't know. So if I had like name, title, or address, and phone number. If I run that, if I wanted the name, title, and address to be a unique, or to have some similar attributes, I can give it a class and say like information or info, and I can copy that class to multiple elements within within the tag. And now I can access, in order to access a class, I can do dot in the name of the class and say like font size, 16 pixels, background color, background clip color to be orange. If I run that, now all three of those are different colors, or all the same color, because it's associated with class of information, and that information class is associated with these 3 paragraph tags. But Oh, go ahead.
Or no, gotcha. Thank you.
So now how do we actually get JavaScript to run in here when I run this file? And I want my script in JavaScript to say, hello, everyone, down here in the console. So just like we did linked our CSS to our HTML, we can link our JavaScript. How to link JavaScript to HTML. First time I'm doing this, we have a script attribute. I'm going to copy this over here. Again, all logic and everything goes inside the head tag. So I'm just going to click there. I've got a script. The source is the name of my JavaScript file. And the name of my JavaScript file is script. And nothing needs to go in between here for it to load. So I'm also going to give it a couple of attributes. Async deferred, it just essentially means run this JavaScript file right here after the web page loads. So if I run that in my JavaScript file, I have console log hello world. Oh, what happened? So when I run this, it should run this JavaScript file, and I should see console log hello world should show up in the console right here. So let's run that. There we go. We get hello everyone. So our JavaScript code is running now. Let's add some interactivity with our JavaScript code. So I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a counter. Whoops. Paragraph tag that says counter. And then within my counter, I'm going to create a span with a 0. So you can have tags that exist within tags. So right here, I've got a paragraph tag, and now I have a span tag. If I run that, I have a counter up here that says that's initially 0. And then underneath it, I'm going to create a button that says increase counter. And I'm going to run that. And now I have an increase counter button. But when I click the button, nothing happens right now. But for example, excuse me, I'm going to add, I'm going to just give it some space. It doesn't do anything. So what I know about, IDs and classes, I'm going to give this value of 0 right here inside the span. I'm going to give it an ID of counter. And then this button, I'm going to give it an ID of button click or increase, I guess, counter. That's what I'll do. So I've got an ID of counter, which corresponds to this, and increase counter, which corresponds to this entire button, which is here. I wish I could split the screen. So with JavaScript, this is just like normal JavaScript. I can write functions. I can do a bunch of stuff in here. So I can console log right here. So what I'm going to do is literally just create a variable called counter and assign it to 0. And then in JavaScript, this is something we're not going to touch on, but inside the web browser, so if I'm going to open up my developer tools, go to the console. Notice how hello everyone ran in here because it's actually executing this file. If I literally just type in document, and notice how it highlighted that entire thing, and I just click enter, I get all of this information right here, like all of this stuff. These are all built-in methods that I can perform functions on this document. It's called the DOM, Document Object Model. I know someone was referencing manipulating the DOM. That's what the DOM stands for. It's Document Object Model, which is essentially everything on the screen. So I can actually execute code on here and change certain elements of this web page. But I'm going to do that within my little front end application right here. So what I'm going to do is say document.getElement by ID, which I'm grabbing this specific element by its ID. And the ID I want to grab is the counter, or I'm sorry, which one, what was it called? I'm going to call this update counter. So I'm going to grab the update counter ID. And what I'm going to do to this update counter ID is I'm going to add what is called an event listener. So an event is anything that happens when I'm interacting with the screen. It can be a click, it could be a mouse over, it could be a hover, it could be a bunch of other events. So what I'm going to do is add event listener to this. And the type of event listener I'm going to add is a click event. And then this add event listener method takes in two parameters, the type of event, which is a click. I can say event listeners. So if I click that, you can see all these different event listeners. Where are they? Oh, that's not a lot. List of event listeners. So these are all different event listeners that you can see. Where's another one? Here, these are all different event listeners that you can grab. So I'm using this click one. So click, and it takes in another argument, which is a function. And I'm going to call this function update counter. And I haven't written this update counter function yet. So now I'm going to actually create an update counter function that I'm going to create as an arrow function. And now I'm going to increase counter by 1. And I'm going to console log counter right now. So if I run this, I get hello everyone down here, executes this. And now when I click this increase counter button, it's going to grab this document by ID and add an event listener called click. So anytime I clicked this button right here, anytime I click it, it's going to execute this function. This function is going to execute. It's going to increase the counter by 1. So from 0 to 1, and then it's going to console log the counter down here in the console. So if I clicked it, I've got 1 down here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's all cool. Great. I know everything works. But now I want the actual counter to actually increment on the screen. So again, I can do the document.getElement by ID. And this time I want to grab the counter over here. So I'm grabbing this right here, this element. And then I'm going to say, hey, make the inner HTML equal to the counter. If I run that, when I click this button, it should execute this function update counter. It's going to increase the counter by 1, and then it's going to reassign the inner HTML to a value of whatever the counter is. So right now it's 0. When I click it, it's going to assign it to counter equals 1. So it's going to reassign the HTML value right here to equal 1. So if I click it, it increases by 1. So now I'm actually interacting with the web page. I've just created an application that just increases a value by 1. You don't need to memorize any of this. Like get element by ID. There's a plethora of built-in methods that enable you to interact with the web page, but this is just one way to do it. What questions do you have?
And is this the way that you teach in Platoon?
When we teach the vanilla portion of it, so if we come over here, when we teach like the vanilla front end, this is kind of how we teach interacting with the DOM that way. But when you're actually interacting with the DOM, it's a lot different. So full-fledged applications are a lot more complex because this isn't necessarily a safe, secure way to interact with an application. So when you're actually clicking this, when you're building a full stack application, you're not doing any document.get element by ID or anything like that. But you can build applications like this, like you can build to-do lists. Yeah, but we do cover this for like a few days in interacting with web pages just using vanilla JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. But you're able to, oh, what the hell? Oh, just a little, people build, no. So this is actually the curriculum. So you build, guess a number, you build a guessing number game, you build a static web page, you build a to-do list, and yeah. You can also, let me pull something up. So before I move forward, does anybody have any questions about just how you can interact with a web page using vanilla JavaScript, HTML, and CSS?